Well, we want the museums to treat our country fairly. We want the museums to talk about the history of our country in a fair manner, not in a woke manner or in a racist manner, which is what many of them, not all of them, but many of them are doing.
President Trump there outlining his motives in ordering a review of exhibitions and materials at 8 Smithsonian museums, including the National Museum of African American History and Culture and the National Museum of the American Indian. The White House says it plans to replace what it considers divisive or ideologically driven language with unifying, historically accurate and constructive descriptions. Well, joining me now is our friend Eddie Glaude, James S. McDonald, distinguished professor at Princeton University and an MSNBC contributor and analyst. And you know, Eddie, I'm just guessing that you've got something to say about this because you are a history professor. So who gets to decide what is divisive versus historically accurate, not to mention the president's depictions of what is, quote, woke and racist?
Well, look, first of all, it's always great to see you, Alex. And, we're dealing with this internet, so I hope I can get through this. But I think it's really important for us to understand what Donald Trump is up to. I think it's very clear that he's trying to tell a story of America that coincides with his own political ambitions, his own conception of America as a white republic. And so, unlike other presidents who believe that we were always already on the road to the more perfect union, Donald Trump believes that the country's perfection was evidenced in its founding. So we can't tell a story about our failings because those stories call into question our inherent goodness and our divine mission. So he's seeking a history that confirms his politics in so many ways, Alex. I think it's a politics that's rooted in a white nationalist project, and we need to call it for what it is.
I was talking with someone off camera about this, and they said, here's the thing. You don't have to really focus on this too much because if he does do changes, make changes, that very quickly they can be undone once he's out of office. Does that give you any, he's going to do what he's going to do?
No, usually when we've been in these sorts of patterns as a country, they last for 50 plus years. The historical analogy to make would be to the end of radical Reconstruction. Its collapse in 1875 and 1876. And what we know is that doesn't get undone until 1954 with the Brown v. Board decision. And what's really distinctive about the collapse of radical Reconstruction is the lost cause, its redemption. It's the very ways in which the nation tells itself its story. And so there are moments actually in the latter part of the 19th century, in the early 20th century, in the 1920s, Alex, where there were school districts that refused to teach Reconstruction. They refused to teach slavery. And so this is a kind of repetition and echoing, a rhyming past. And so we just can't assume that we get the back of Donald Trump's head and we're going to be in a better position. No, because Donald Trump is just the tip of the rot. The rot is much deeper in the country, it seems to me.
Speaking of schools, Eddie, last week the White House asked colleges for admissions data. But as Trump seeks to eliminate any consideration of race in college admissions, critics and supporters alike are calling him out for not tackling, say, legacy admissions, the edge that's given to the children of alumni or relatives of wealthy donors. So is that blatantly unfair?
It's not only blatantly unfair, it also reveals what's really motivating the policy. The problem is always with black students or brown students who get admission. White students or Asian students, they don't get a seat because these unqualified black students are getting seats. Why is that necessarily the case? About a range of folks, right? I'm sorry, this is this internet. I'm sorry. But why aren't we talking about athletes
keep going.
and others? Right? Why aren't we talking about these other ways in which classes are constituted? Instead, it's always these black folk. Trump is trying to, in so many ways, cut the pipeline off by cutting off access to these extraordinary institutions that give us social capital.